The Nats have announced their prospect schedule for next week's game against the big league club. Who made the cut? Who might be making the major league roster? And who could be getting sent down?
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as the show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, just make sure to check us out over on Twitter. Later on in today's show, Washington. Andrew Golden of the Washington Post wrote an incredible story on Jake Irvin as to, his rookie season, all the different stuff that he had to go through, all the loops that he had to jump through. You may not be recognizing what he had to go through, what that was. Sweat. No, I'm not kidding. We're going to discuss that hilarious story a little bit later on in today's show, as it's just incredible. We'll discuss that as we get on later on in the show today. But also in the second segment, do we really care about spring training results? Not just wins and losses, but like stats. We've talked about Joey Gallo putting up some pretty bad numbers. You've talked about guys like Joe LaSorsa who are putting up really good numbers, who have 7 saves this spring training, who's looking like a lights out bullpen piece. Do we really care, or is it just spring training? Let's kind of get into that, because I think there's a fine line of what to really look at and what not to look at. We'll discuss that a little bit later on as we kind of heat up for the regular season, but let's start off discussing this, because if I'm going to be honest, out of all 162 games this year, I look forward to. Here's kind of the pecking order of the games that I really care about this season. This is what it is. Number one, let me tell you guys about our sponsor. First off, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I care about when the Phillies are in town. I want to see Bryce Harper. I want to see Trey Turner. I want to see all the different Philadelphia Phillies guys, because in my opinion, they're our number one rival. The Phillies, that's who I look forward to seeing. And then after that, I look forward to seeing the Braves. Really, even then, the New York Mets, I guess, are up there. But if I was going to be honest, the fourth game that I really care about this season, or series, whatever you're going to put it as, is the Nationals prospects against the Nationals big leaguers. That is coming next Tuesday. We are less than 1 week away from seeing your future Washington Nationals take on the current Washington Nationals. That may not sound all too exciting to you. You may be asking, well, what's the big deal about this? It's a spring training game, relatively. It's the first game over at Nationals Park. Then they go shipped off to Cincinnati, and the others get shipped off to wherever they're going, AAA, AA, wherever. Why would you really care about this game? Well, this is the future. This is why the Nationals have been bad for so long. It's for the future. And you're starting to see the cream rise to the top, as it always does, with all these different prospects. I think this is going to be one of the more exciting games of the season, bar none. I truly do believe in that. Let's say it's the 163rd game of the year. This would probably rank in my top 5 games of what I want to see. And the reason as to why that is because, again, the future is right there at Nationals Park. The next time that you will be able to see Dylan Cruz, Robert Hassel, James Wood, Brady House, Trey Lipscomb, DJ Hers, Jackson Rutledge, all on the mound at once, or all on the baseball diamond at once, is when they will be on this Nationals roster, hopefully sometime later on this season. All of them there. But now you get to see this right then and there. Not only are you going to be seeing this Nationals team and the young prospects coming up and hopefully fighting for roster spots eventually, you're going to be seeing them go against the current major league team right here, who's going to be your starting opening day Nats team. This is going to be an exciting thing, because here's number one. These prospects, we can kind of decipher who's going to make the team and who's not going to make the team by depending, you can kind of read into it. The Nationals prospects against the Nationals big leaguers. They've already announced the Nationals prospects roster, so you can just already assume Dylan Cruz, Robert Hassel, James Wood, DJ Hers, Brady House, and Trey Lipscomb, they're all going to be starting down in the minors. Not a shocker to anyone, really. Trey Lipscomb was a guy who, in my opinion, was really pushing for an opening day spot. James Wood was obviously pushing for an opening day spot as well. But I think going into this now, you have to be thrilled. You have to be excited about where this Nationals team is going. Because again, not only are you going to be seeing a bunch of these top prospects, you're going to be seeing some middle tier prospects who were wildly impressive this last year. DJ Hers, left-handed pitcher, who at times struggled throughout spring training, but still, he stuck with the best of them as far as spring training goes. And now, even furthermore than that, this is just an exciting feature for number one that the Nationals are doing. This is something that you should be doing every single year if you have the farm system to do it with. If you have your Dylan Cruz, your James Wood, your Brady Houses to be excited about moving forward. If you have these guys, it's going to make these things way more exciting. Do this every single year, in fact. Even if the farm system, as bad as it has been in the past, like let's say it's 2021, when the Nationals didn't really have all too many top prospects. You were going to draft Brady House later on in that summer, who has turned out to be really good. Really, at that point, all you had was Cade Cavalli. Luis Garcia, who at that point as well was sort of considered a prospect. Carter Kieboom, at that point, was still sort of considered to be a young prospect. All these different things aside, though, this is going to be the game to watch. This is why the Nationals have been awful for all these years. It's to see moments like this, to see these guys over at Nationals Park and hopefully make a difference for this major league team someday. Because let's be honest, are we a little disappointed that none of these guys made the opening day roster? I think there's another word for disappointed in there. I'm not disappointed. I'm not surprised by this. But still, I wasn't expecting Trey Lipscomb to be your opening day second baseman, but it would have been nice. Would have been nice to see James Wood starting in right field or center field, wherever you would want to put him. That would be a lot of fun. We'd all be happy for it. But I think going forward now, not only can you expect these guys to be up in the majors this year after the way that spring training has gone, but I think you can all expect some of these guys like a James Wood, Brady House, all the different big-time prospects to come up and make an impact probably sometime this season. And then next year in 2025, you're talking about an opening day roster of all these guys on the active roster going to compete for 162 games, and that is when the fun will start. But now with this, number one, again, just going back to it, it's a great idea. This isn't just the Nationals doing this. Major league teams have done this in the past. I believe the Yankees have done this a lot of times. I believe the Orioles have done this in the past as well. But now the Nationals are kind of dipping into this water, and it's a good feeling because you should be doing this every single year. Because again, what is 2024 about? We've talked about this a lot if you're an everydayer out there. It's about the young guys. It's about the young prospects. It's about James Wood's development. It's about Dylan Cruz getting right back on track. It's about Robert Hassel recovering from a really tough 2023 season and bouncing back. It's about seeing DJ Hers cut down his walks. That is what this year is going to be about. That is where the Nationals will get their wins. They're not going to be getting their wins in the win column. You may be saying like, what? That doesn't make any sense. The wins, it's going to be individual performances, unfortunately. And with that said, you're going to be seeing a lot of DJ Hers box scores. You're going to be seeing a lot of James Wood swing breakdowns this season. And you're going to be seeing a lot of Dylan Cruz content as well. Because here on Locked On Nationals, the present, unfortunately, not all too much to live in with. You have CJ Abrams, you have Keibert Ruiz, you have these young guys that you do want to mold and kind of spread the foundation moving forward. But even then, we all know the minor leagues, that is where this Nationals team will be making their bread and butter this year. You got to be able to develop these guys as they haven't really been able to done in years past because we have seen a lot of struggles. You have seen a lot of first-round draft picks just really kind of flare out in the minors. A lot of pitching prospects not necessarily make it, like Mason Denneberg of years past. Jackson Rutledge at some point, but even then, Jackson Rutledge has had his times of being really good. So not going to dunk on him on too much over there, but you get the gist. It's about the future. The future, here. It's here. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. So some people kind of look into spring training and the numbers that are up there and really kind of look into it. Of course, we talk about it for a little verbatim here on Locked On Nationals, but ultimately, should people care about spring training results? Should they care about the numbers? Should you care about someone's OPS? Should you care about a pitcher's ERA? Should you care about a batting average? Whatever it is, should you simply care? Should you care about a win or loss? Because the Nationals do have a winning record right now. But should you care? That's the big question. We'll discuss that and answer that for you after I tell you guys about our good friends over at PrizePicks. And guys, when we talk about PrizePicks, you got to know this, that football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high stakes basketball moments at this time of year. Get into the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. And of course, you may want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like Meek Mill and Chickashawn O'Malley. You can now find community plays under the promos tab. Each entry from sort of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. And guys, when you do that, you can say, let's do Stephen Curry for more than 29 or 28 points tonight. Maybe you want to take UVA in the under in the game. Whatever it is, you can do that with our friends at PrizePicks. And of course, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is code LOCKEDONMLB. Now we get back into it as the Nationals and spring training. They've had a pretty good season, spring training to say the least. If you're looking by the record, if you're looking by some of the numbers, the Nationals, they are 14-9. They've had some really good pitching performances. You've had a lot of different things go well. You see all the different prospects making a difference. The Nationals did have an off day yesterday, but still, they're going to be having a winning record in spring training. That's pretty cool. Nice. Because again, do we really care about results, though? That's kind of the question here. And it's not just wins or losses. It's really kind of about the batting average. Do you care about Lane Thomas's sky-high OPS? Do you care about James Wood killing the baseball? Now, here's where the conversation kind of divide here. As far as prospects go, like your James Wood, like your Dylan Cruz, like your Robert Hassel, if a guy is going to be impressive, like the way that James Wood was this entire spring training, that is impressive. That is noteworthy. The reason why I kind of single him out, and the reason why I kind of single out the success of major league prospects is because of this. Baseball is a weird game. It's one of the only games where you're going to fail more before you succeed. It's just as simple as that as far as offensively goes. James Wood was doing this against a lot of major league talent. He was killing the baseball off of major league talent. Brady House was roping singles off major league talent. The reason why I single out those younger prospects and why I care about their individual stats maybe a little bit more than the other guys is because they are playing up against their competition. If you are going to be impressive in that sense, then that is going to be noteworthy. That is going to be a case as to why you should be up in the major leagues relatively soon. That is going to be your case as to why, in James Wood's case, maybe he should be on the opening day roster. Not because, he's on a little hot stretch. It's because he's proving to us right then and there that he's playing up to his talent. That this is not going to be a go into the majors, stink for a little bit, and then get sitting back down in AAA. That's not going to be the case with James Wood. I think what he showed us is that he is ready. He is going to be ready for whenever that time is to get called up, hopefully sometime this summer. Dylan Cruz's case maybe didn't have the best spring training. His numbers weren't all too great. Do I care about that? No. Because again, the reason why it's impressive as to why James Wood had a big-time spring training, the reason why we're sitting here clapping like seals and saying this guy is going to be great is because he's playing up in his competition. The key word, you're playing up in competition. Dylan Cruz is not ready to be a major leaguer yet. Now, if he were to be on the opening day roster, let's just say he was, he'd probably be one of the Nationals' better hitters on day one. We would understand that. But reality is, he did struggle a little bit down in West Palm. Not all too much, but he did struggle a tad bit. That's not concerning because, again, he is playing up against competition. So when you go by individual performances here and kind of singling out these prospects, Dylan Cruz is not ready to be a Washington National right this second. He's ready to be a Harrisburg Senator. He's ready to be a Rochester Red Wing. He's ready for those things. And that's not a bad thing. You should be patient with your prospects. You should allow them. Let them tell you what they need. What James Wood told us this spring training is that he's knocking on the door for Major League Baseball. What Dylan Cruz told us from this spring training, he needs a little bit of time to simmer. But even then, James Wood, ultra impressive this year. I'm not unimpressed with Dylan Cruz because, again, you are playing up against Major League talent. And yes, of course, some of the time, you are going up, a lot of the time in these cases, you're going up against some camp arms who may not be Major League talent. That's fine. I understand that. But when you have Davey Martinez in the first base dugout, I knew a little bit, Gerardo Parra over to the first base side, these guys are thinking they're playing in the major leagues. They're competing for a job. The pressure is on for these prospects. So really, yes, good results I look at and say, that is noticeable. Bad results are really just poor and just average results. I just kind of throw that away and say, it's fine. Now let's get to the major league side of things. Your C.J. Abrams of the world, your Keibert Ruiz, your Joey Meneses. Individual stats and performances, again, you can applaud them. I want to see what they do best. And what they do best, for instance, C.J. Abrams. How's he stealing bags? How's he getting on base? How's he hitting for average? I want to see those things from him. He didn't do all too great this spring, but he wasn't all too bad. He was putting the ball in play. You saw him a lot of times really look good at a lot of different key spots. I don't think that you should be singling out individual performances here as far as Major League roster goes. The reason why I say that is because it just doesn't necessarily matter all too much at the end of the day. It's really not going to be threading the needle for anybody. Mike Rizzo is not looking at the box score saying, "Whoa, this guy's good." It's looking at potential. It's looking at getting your swing right, the fundamentals of things, getting back into your routine, because that is really what spring training is all about. A lot of people talk about why spring training is too long. You've seen a lot of stories about it over the last few weeks here. Spring training ultimately is not really for the hitters. It's not. It's never been that way. It's for the pitchers to get stretched out, to kind of get acclimated to pitching every 5 days, getting your routine down, pitching every 5 days, getting your routine down for a 1 o'clock start or a 4 o'clock start or a 6:45 start. That is what spring training is about. Unfortunately, the hitters, they're just there. You don't really need to get acclimated all too much besides outside maybe a handful of weeks and a handful at bats. That's really it. But going forward, care about the prospects. And if they are impressive, you look at that and you say, that is impressive. He's putting up really good numbers against some major league talent right now with major league eyeballs on him. That is all impressive. But then if they're not all too great, it's whatever. They're not ready. The reason why they aren't on the opening day roster is because they are not ready. So I think there's a very key kind of difference here and a fine line as far as prospects go and the way that you judge them during spring training and the way that you judge major leaguers. Because again, hitting wise and pitching wise for major league ready talent, guys who are already in the majors, yeah, I look at them and I'm like, well, Josiah Gray walked 7 guys the other night. That's not all too great. I look at that and kind of say, not great. But still, it's spring training. If you're going to make the mistakes now. You don't really know if they're trying something new because, again, a lot of these days where guys, spring training is a scrimmage. They're going to try things that you may not be able to try during the regular season. I'm not saying that's what Josiah Gray was doing, but you don't really know. Because, again, we've seen a lot of issues with Josiah Gray over the years when it comes to his command. And a lot of those times, it's as simple as his front left shoulder flying open as soon as he releases that baseball, which then kind of gets his control all out of whack. But at the end of the day, I'm not all too concerned about it. I'm impressed with some of the prospects and what they have done. I'm not unimpressed with really anyone. Besides, Not going to lie, a little bit of Joey Gallo, but not great this spring, to say the least. But we all understand the point. Spring training. RELAX, relax. Next, really great story by Andrew Golden in the Washington Post discussed Jake Irvin and his struggles with sweat. I mean, incredible. A kid from Minnesota, grew up pitching in the snow, goes to DC in the swampy DC. And if you're not from here, lucky, first off. Second off, you have no idea what the summers are like down in July to August and a little bit of early September too. It gets muggy. How did Jake Irvin deal with it? And what did he do? We'll discuss that after I tell you guys about our good friends over at Gametime. And guys, when we talk about Gametime, I want you to know that if you want the best app for tickets to any event, you should never have to worry, and you shouldn't worry, and you won't worry when you buy tickets at Gametime, because Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, and some of my favorite things is that you have last-minute tickets, flash deals, and of course, zone deals as well. And easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, whether it's comedy, a sporting event, or maybe just a concert or a playoff game. Whatever it is, you can find it over at our friends at Gametime. And of course, see the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. That's one of my favorite features with Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now we get back into it as the Nationals and Jake Irvin. Houston, we've got a problem. It's not the fact that Jake Irvin's not good. It's not the fact that Andrew Golden wrote a story in the Washington Post. Andrew Golden's one of the most prized beat reporters out there on the Washington Post, in my opinion, and he wrote a slam dunk great story in the Washington Post about how Jake Irvin in his rookie season didn't really come away with it struggling against major league hitters. Didn't come with it about adjusting to kind of getting your velo back up and recovering from Tommy John at the same time. What he faced, the adversity that Jake Irvin faced, was what we face. One of us. He is one of us because his biggest battle was against sweat. In the summer of DC, first and foremost, it's kind of ad lib here. We all know that the DC summers stink. I mean, they're hot. You get hot, it's muggy, you sweat everywhere you go. And if you know, you always have a backup shirt with you. You just do. If you're at work, going to a Nats game after, you're typically going to bring a shirt maybe to change it after the game or before the game, whatever it is. Jake Irvin, he is one of us. Quote, "It's just getting used to pitching in those hot atmosphere," Irvin said. Obviously, you do that in the minor leagues too, but now on a different level with a different focus, things are amplified a little bit. In what sense do you mean that, Jake Irvin? What sense do you mean things are amplified just a little bit? You have Davey Martinez watching you every 5 days. You have Mark Lerner sitting up in his suite watching. You have Mike Rizzo sitting up in his suite with all the other executives and analytic-minded guys sitting up there as well. Is there pressure in that sense? Think about it this way. When you're sitting at Nationals Park on those plastic seats there in a muggy afternoon, think about how sweaty your back gets just laying back in those dark seats. Now imagine that with a lot thicker fabric and a baseball jersey. And the fact that you are competing and pitching, and you're also probably not in the shade at that moment, as Nationals Park kind of lacks shade. Do you know how hard that is? And do you just know how funny that is in general? That this guy who grew up in Minnesota, where he was pitching in the snow, he can't pitch when he's sweating, or he can pitch when he's sweaty, but even then, you understand the point. This is a funny quote as well from the story, because David Martinez was asked about it, and this is what he said to Andrew Golden, quote, "At one point in time, he didn't realize that he had extra jerseys that he could switch out. I went to hug him one day, and I'm like, what the heck? Your jersey's soaked." And this is what Jake Irvin had to say about that when he came in St. Louis, which is the low point of his last year. Quote, in between every inning, I was trying to switch jerseys. I had to switch pants. I was going through it big time. And then when I was out in the mound, I had a couple innings where there were high pitch innings. I just remember sweat dripping from my hand as I'm holding the ball. I'm like, man, I'm throwing a sweaty ball. People sleep on how hard this is because, again, Kyle Finnegan was also mentioned in the story of as well as someone who grew up not in the hottest climate ever. And this is what he had to say about it. Quote, there's a point where you just got to deal with it. It's more of just learning to trust that even if the ball feels a little bit sweaty in your hand, that it's going to go where you want it to go. I don't know why this story just meant something to me. Someone who sweats a lot, I understand. I feel your just bad beats all over the place. But Jake Irvin versus sweat, that's going to be something I'm going to be watching this year. Can he control the sweatiness? I know I can. So it'll be a fun season filled with Jake Irvin and all his sweat stories. Of course, if you want to hear some more Jake Irvin sweat stories, catch us over on Locked On Nationals. Search YouTube at Locked On Nationals. Hit that subscriber button, please, and thank you. And of course, I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.